My name is Caroline Whitman, and for the longest time I truly believed I was living a fairy tale. I was 38, a published author, living in a beautiful brownstone apartment in Manhattan with my husband Mark, a financial consultant whose voice could melt away my stress in seconds. He had a way of saying my name, soft and slow, like a promise that nothing bad could ever reach me. Every morning started with a kiss on my forehead and coffee, exactly the way I liked it, and every evening ended with him whispering that I was his world. I believed him completely, without question, without hesitation, until one night when everything changed and I realized that comfort can be the most dangerous place to fall asleep. It was close to midnight when I woke up to an empty bed. At first, I assumed Mark had gone downstairs to grab a snack or check on something, maybe a work email or a forgotten call, because he often worked odd hours. I rolled over, thinking I would drift back to sleep, and then I heard it, a voice, his voice, coming from his home office. It was low, serious, controlled, and calculated in a way I had never heard when he spoke to me. He said she still does not suspect anything. I froze so completely it felt like my body forgot how to move. I could not breathe properly. The air felt thick, and my heart started pounding like a drum in my chest. I sat up, listening harder, trying to catch every syllable. "Everything is going as planned. Almost done," he continued. I tiptoed into the hallway and pressed myself against the wall near his office door. A thin line of light escaped through the crack. I could barely hear the rest, but I did not need to. I had already heard enough to know my life was not what I thought it was. I crept back to bed and lay as still as I could, forcing myself to breathe evenly and pretending to sleep when Mark returned minutes later. He slipped into bed with the same practiced calm, pulling the blanket over us like he had not just shattered the world I lived in. That night, I did not sleep. I stared at the ceiling, my mind racing in circles that felt endless. I did not know exactly what he was planning, but I knew one thing for sure. My husband was hiding something, and it involved me, my future, and everything I had built. The next morning, I moved through the kitchen like a ghost. Mark was still asleep, his breathing slow and steady, and I stood in front of the coffee maker with trembling hands, staring at my phone as if it might bite me. Until that moment, I had never once checked our finances. Mark always handled everything: bills, savings, investments, account management, and paperwork. I trusted him because I thought that was what a good wife did, and I believed love meant letting your partner carry the heavy parts. But trust, I was learning, could be the first step toward losing everything if you give it to the wrong person. I opened the banking app, and my breath caught so sharply it felt painful. Transaction after transaction flashed on the screen. 500 here, 1,000 there, 750, 2,000, dozens of withdrawals over the past 3 months. Nothing enormous on its own, nothing that would trigger an automatic alert, but together they painted a picture, a very ugly one. I gripped the edge of the counter, trying to steady myself, trying not to panic, trying not to let fear take control of my face. Then I heard his voice behind me. "Checking the account this early." His tone sounded casual, but I caught the flicker of surprise in his eyes as he leaned against the doorway and rubbed the back of his neck like he was searching for an excuse. I forced myself to sound calm. I told him I was just being curious and that some of the charges looked unfamiliar. He walked over, poured himself a cup of coffee, and gave me a practiced smile, the kind meant to soften suspicion before it forms into certainty. He said those were just a few small investments and that he must have forgotten to mention them. He took a sip without meeting my eyes. Something inside me snapped, but it was not anger yet. It was colder than anger. It was the sudden clarity of realizing that the person you trusted most was capable of hiding the truth with ease. I nodded slowly, pretending to accept his explanation, but I was watching him now. Not with love, not with trust, but with sharp attention. Every casual shrug and every deflection became another crack in the image I had once believed in. That night, I noticed more. He was on his phone constantly. He always turned it face down. He stepped away to take calls. When I asked what he was working on, he smiled and told me it was just business and nothing for me to worry about. But I was worried, deeply, and that worry was transforming into resolve. I was not going to wait around to find out what he was planning. I needed answers, and I needed them fast. 2 days later, I got my chance. It was a quiet evening. Mark finished dinner and said he was going to take a shower. Normally, he carried his phone everywhere like it was an extension of his body, like losing sight of it for 1 second would be a disaster. But tonight, for the first time, he left it on the dining table. I stared at it, my heart pounding like a warning bell. I waited 30 seconds, then 60, listening to the water running upstairs, and then I reached for it. His phone was unlocked. My fingers trembled as I scrolled through recent messages. Most were harmless, work-related reminders, casual chats, normal-sounding updates. Then one thread stood out. There was no contact name, just a number. The most recent message read, "Send her the Ilium files. Just make sure she stays in the dark. Almost done." I froze, staring until the words blurred. I read it again, then again. Ilium files. Stay in the dark. Almost done. Who was her? Was it me? Was he sending someone something about me, something meant to trap me, something meant to take something from me? My stomach turned. I placed the phone back exactly where he left it, careful not to disturb anything, careful not to leave a trace that I had touched it. I walked to the kitchen, splashed cold water on my face, and tried to slow my breathing. The shower was still running. I had a few more minutes, but my mind would not stop. Mark was not just lying. He was planning something big, and I was the target. Later that night, when he got into bed, he kissed my forehead like always and asked if I was okay in that soft voice that used to make me feel safe. I nodded and smiled faintly, saying I was just tired. Inside, I was screaming. He did not know I had seen the message. He still believed I was in the dark. That was his mistake, and I intended to use it. The next morning, as soon as Mark left for work, I called Anna Prescott. Anna was not just my best friend from college. She was a brilliant estate attorney who understood asset protection, trust structures, legal boundaries, and the way people try to weaponize paperwork when love turns into war. We had lost touch for a few years, but reconnected last summer over coffee. I never imagined I would be calling her like this, my voice shaking, my hands cold. When she picked up, I did not waste time. I told her everything. Mark's late-night whispering, the hidden transactions, the message about the Ilium files. She listened quietly, and when I finished, she asked just one question. "How much money are we talking about?" "Close to 500 million, I said. There was a pause, the kind that happens when someone realizes the scale of what is at stake. Then her voice came back firm and clear. "Caroline, we need to move your assets now." My knees weakened, and I sat on the edge of the couch because suddenly I could feel how close I was to losing the life I had built. I asked if she was sure. She said yes, because if I waited, he would make his next move first. She explained we would create a protected trust in my name, legally shielded, structured properly, documented cleanly, and designed so he could not touch a dime. I swallowed hard as the reality hit me. The apartment, the savings, the book royalties, the investments, everything I had worked for was on the line. I told her I was in. The next 72 hours became a blur of documents, signatures, calls, and legal steps that felt like building an invisible fortress around my life. Anna worked like a machine. She brought in her team. We moved the apartment title into the trust. We locked down investment accounts. We shifted assets under legal protection in a way that was documented, defensible, and compliant. We reviewed every detail to make sure there were no gaps, no loopholes, and no mistakes. By the time Mark got home on the third day, I had done what I never thought I would have to do: defend myself from the man I once trusted with my life. He walked through the door carrying takeout, wearing his usual charming smile, as if nothing in the world was wrong. He said he thought we would have Thai tonight. I nodded and took the bag from his hand, acting normal, keeping my face calm, keeping my voice steady. He had no idea everything had changed. The papers were signed, the money was moved, the fortress was built. He could try whatever he wanted, but he would never get near my assets again. And I was not going to warn him. I let him believe I was still asleep. I let him believe I was still in the dark. I let him plan his next move, because now I was ready. 4 days later, Mark made his move. It was a Friday evening. He came home earlier than usual, dressed in one of his tailored suits, calm and almost smug as he set his briefcase down and sat across from me at the dining table. He said we needed to talk, and he slid a folder toward me. I did not flinch. I opened it slowly, revealing the documents inside. Divorce papers. He said it was for the best, that we had grown apart, and that he did not want things to become more painful. His voice sounded rehearsed, like he had practiced it in front of a mirror. I looked up at him, keeping my face unreadable, and asked if he was serious. He hesitated for a second, just long enough for me to see uncertainty flicker behind his eyes, and then he nodded and repeated that it was better this way. I slid the folder back toward him and told him that before we went any further, there was something he should know. His brows drew together, and he asked what. I leaned forward slightly, my voice calm, clear, and deliberate. I told him I had already moved everything. He blinked, confused, and asked what I meant. I told him the apartment, the accounts, the royalties, all of it, was in a protected trust now, and he could not touch it. The color drained from his face so quickly it was almost frightening. He stammered, trying to understand, trying to regain control. I told him he did not get to walk in, hand me divorce papers, and walk away with half of my life. His jaw tightened, his hand clenched around the edge of the folder, and he said I could not do that. I told him I already did. He stared at me, searching for weakness, searching for tears, searching for the version of me he could manipulate. I did not give him one. I told him he was right about one thing: life is unpredictable. He pushed back from the table and rose slowly, saying we would see each other in court, his voice cold and sharp. I stood too and told him to go ahead and try. He walked out, and for the first time in weeks, I exhaled fully because now he knew. I was not the woman he could control anymore. I thought the worst was over. I was wrong. 3 days after Mark stormed out, I noticed something strange at work. Whispers, side glances. Colleagues who usually greeted me warmly suddenly avoided eye contact. It was too consistent to be paranoia. Then my assistant Rachel walked into my office with a pale face, holding a printout, and said she thought I needed to see it. It was a screenshot from an anonymous online forum. The post title said CFO hides funds during divorce using company money. Underneath was a paragraph accusing an unnamed executive of embezzling funds to protect herself in a divorce, implying criminal activity. In the comments, someone made it specific. They wrote Caroline Whitman, look into her. I felt the blood drain from my face. Mark. He was behind this. I could feel it in my bones. He was trying to ruin me. Rachel nodded grimly and said that if it spread, it could damage my reputation or worse. I stood up and paced the room. I had spent years building my name and credibility. I had climbed every step on my own merit. No shortcuts, no favors. And now one lie could tear it all apart. I told Rachel I needed to call Anna, and I grabbed my phone with hands that were steady only because I refused to break in front of anyone. That evening, I sat across from Anna in her office. I told her what was happening, my voice shaking with a mix of fear and fury. I told her it was not just personal anymore, and that he was trying to destroy me professionally. Anna leaned back, fingers steepled, and said he was playing dirty to force me into a settlement. He wanted to scare me into giving up. I looked her straight in the eye and told her I was not backing down. She nodded, already drafting a plan. First step, a cease and desist. If he pushed further, we would sue for defamation and reputational harm. A small spark of hope ignited inside me, because he wanted to wear me down with lies, but he underestimated one thing. I was not afraid of the truth, and I was not going anywhere. Just when I thought I had seen all of Mark's tricks, he went even lower. 3 days later, Anna called me into her office, her tone clipped and serious, and told me he had filed a lawsuit accusing me of financial fraud. My heart sank. She said he claimed I illegally moved marital assets and alleged I embezzled funds from joint accounts. I slumped into the chair across from her, stunned that someone who once promised to love me could twist the system like a weapon. I said he could not be serious. Anna said he was, and there was more. She slid a file across the desk and explained he filed with a co-plaintiff. I opened the folder and the name hit me like a punch to the gut. Ilomero. It was the name connected to the message I had seen on Mark's phone, the one tied to those so-called Ilium files. I asked who he was. Anna crossed her arms and said he was a known fraudster linked to multiple cases involving forged documents, with no convictions yet but a long trail of suspicion. I flipped through the documents. They were detailed, filled with numbers and fake transactions, some even mimicking my signature. I said these were not mine, that they were fabrications, and my voice rose because anger finally arrived, pure and justified. Anna nodded and said we knew, but we had to prove it, and fast. All the fear I carried turned into fire. Mark was trying to bury me in lies again. Anna's eyes narrowed, and she told me then we would make sure those lies collapsed on top of him. She handed the file to a forensic finance expert. For the next week, we worked non-stop gathering real transaction records, tracing digital footprints, verifying every move I had made, and documenting each step so clearly that it could withstand every attack. I barely slept, but I kept going because it was not just about money anymore. It was about my name, my integrity, and my right to defend what was mine. By the end of the week, we had what we needed. The expert traced the false documents to Ilamero's network. The dates did not match. The signatures were inconsistent. The formatting patterns revealed fabrication. Most importantly, there was no legitimate paper trail connecting those fake transactions to any of my real accounts. A month later, we walked into court. Anna was calm and sharp as ever. I sat beside her dressed in navy, shoulders back, hands steady, refusing to look like a victim. Across the room, Mark looked like a shadow of the man I once knew, angry, twitchy, unprepared, and desperate. The judge reviewed the case carefully. Our documentation was airtight. Ilomero never showed up. When the ruling was read aloud, I closed my eyes, not out of relief, but out of finality. The court dismissed Mark's claims. He was denied access to any part of my trust. His defamation tactics backfired. Instead of winning anything, he was ordered to cover my legal fees, and his actions became part of the record in a way he could not erase. After the hearing, he tried to approach me in the hallway and said, I did not have to do this. His voice was low, like he wanted pity, like he wanted to rewrite the story again. I looked him straight in the eye and told him no. Mark, you did not have to do this, because he was the one who started it, the one who chose betrayal, the one who chose lies. Then I walked away for good. In the weeks that followed, I picked up the pieces of my life slowly and carefully. I returned to writing. I took long walks through Central Park. I let quiet replace chaos. I did not celebrate. I reflected, because victory does not always feel like joy. Sometimes it feels like peace after a storm. Sometimes it feels like the absence of fear. I learned something through all of this, something every woman should know. Trust is a gift, but control over your life is a right. No matter how loving someone seems, never hand over your power blindly. Know your worth. Protect your future. Be willing to act before it is too late. And if someone ever tries to break you with betrayal, stand. Stand and let the truth speak louder than revenge. If you are still listening, thank you. If this story resonated with you, share it, like, comment, and let others know they are not alone. Strength is not just surviving the storm. Strength is learning how to own the sky afterward. I discovered my husband was planning a divorce, and I moved my fortune before he could touch it, and the truth is, the moment I stopped being afraid was the moment my life became mine again.